Hello everyone, Satorn here giving you another Vicky 3 tutorial. This time it's not a short one. It's going to be about battles, wars, why troops aren't showing up, the whole thing. We're going to go through a whole war with Paraguay. You can kind of see how the battles work out, and we're going to go in a little bit more detail in this video than we normally do, so let's get into it. So the first thing is preparation before battle. Take a look and see. So we have our diplomatic play. We have Paraguay versus us. Paraguay has 15 troops, which will mobilize, and then we also have 15 ourselves. So it's a really even match, and we have one front. So I think this is a really good example. The next thing I would look at is how we're going to defend our own lands, because that's the most important. We want to protect our people, and then we want to be able to push forward with another front to be able to take over land, because that's the only way we're going to be able to win the war goal. So to be able to do this, we want to look at the states where we're going to be defending. So the first one here is going to be Mato Grosso, and we want to figure out the combat width. The combat width is important because it's the base value of how many troops are going to show up in your battle or have a chance. There is RNG in this, so, and definitely you're going to see defenders also have a clear advantage. But let's break it down. So combat width, the first thing that you do, and here's the calculation, is pretty much infrastructure divided by 2 plus 5 times your terrain. And the terrain value is, if it's plains, like in our example here, it's 1. And then as you move towards the mountains, it's a 0.3. So it's a third of the actual value of everything, which is crazy. So definitely in open plains, right? It's great. Then as you go to forests, it's worse. And I don't have the exact values. We could probably get that somewheres, or maybe someone could put it down in the chat below. But that's what's going to give you a general idea. So I either go with like either 1, or if it's a forest, it's kind of like a 0.5. And if it's mountains, I'll go with like 0.3 is what I'll use. So for in this example here for Mato Grosso, we'll see that we have our infrastructure, which is of using 3 of 4. So 4 is our total. And then we're going to divide that by 2. So it's 2. And then we're going to add 5 to it. So it's 7. And then the terrain is 1. So it's going to be 7. So we can have up to 7 troops in total on our side when we're defending, because it's going to be within our state. Then we'd have to do the calculation again if we're going offensively, because then we'll be going into the Paraguayan Mato Grosso, and here it would be a lot worse, right? So their infrastructure is only 2, right? So 2 divided by 2 is 1, 5 plus 1 is 6, and then this is a 4, so I would figure it's about half of that, so 3. So say 3 to 4 troops are gonna, that is the max that's gonna show up, or base level that could show up here, and there's gonna be some other calculations after this, but this gives you a general idea, and also an idea of how many troops you really do need on the front line. With knowing the combat width, you can now figure out how you want to split up your armies or your divisions here. So we have 15, right, all under 1 general, and we know we only need 7 to 8 troops to defend, and we could use 3 or 4 to go offensively. So what I would do here in this situation, I was recruit another general. Sadly, this is where I think Paradox needs to change this, where we could have a little bit more control over things. But we'll end up creating another general here, and we'll see we have a defensive strategist and an experienced offensive player. This is excellent. But this guy has an offensive bonus, which is really good. And you see right now they're just going to split the troops between the 2 generals. So we'll do that now. And now we've got the 2 generals here. We have one that's an offensive planner, and then the other one that's also an offensive planner. He's a defensive strategist, so I'd rather put this guy in the defense, and we'll have Augusto be the guy who's going to probably go in. And we could make this even less, right? So we know 8 troops might be too much. We could probably split this again and get another general if we wanted to. Heck, why not? So maybe we'll do this, but again, we can't control who's going to get it is the problem. But we could go here. We can see we have a mountain expert or an explorer, so nobody with any great advantages, so I don't think it's probably worth it. So we'll do with what I originally thought, is that we'll mobilize this, and we'll make sure that this guy and these armies are out on the front line and defending. And what we could do for the rest of these, for Augusto, who's going to be our offensive, we'll mobilize him as well, but we could keep him in standby. And the reason why we could do this, right, so we have attrition risk for the defenders here, minus or plus 20%. The same thing here, when we advance them to the front, And while they're sitting there, they're going to take attrition. So you really got to keep in mind that we don't need all 15 troops here right from the get-go. What we'll do is maybe we'll defend and have a couple battles here. We could have these guys mobilized and waiting and wait out. And what's good about having these guys mobilized also with this other army is that they should flip in between in and out. So when one army here gets defeated or the morale is low, they could actually trade on and off. So if we take heavy losses on our defensive battles and this guy is not in any front yet or fighting anything, right, his standby and his troops can then be swapped in for your army, which is pretty good. We'll have to see if I could get an example of that, but that's what I've read. So we'll have to see, how true that is, but that's what I've heard. And so that'll make things a little bit easier. Then when we're ready, the plan will be setting him on an advanced front and we'll move forward. And again, we could have this in even smaller group if we wanted to, because we know for our combat with, right, the most we're going to see is 4 troops probably show up on our side. Another thing to keep in mind, if you can be defensive in this game, it is worth it. If you're at war and you can do it defensively, then I highly recommend it in the current state that it's in. The reason why is if you look at tech. So for example, let's just take a look at Paraguay. They have line infantry as well as mobile artillery, which I think are the same as what we have. So we're going to take a look. Also, if you can get medical aid and recovery rate, that's very, very good. The higher that is, the more likely troops will come back for you to be able to fight, which is nice. And then on our side, we also have line infantry as well as mobile artillery, and again, no medical aid. So we're equal, right, when it comes to this. However, when you look at your technology under military, there's a lot of advantages as you move down the line. Fieldworks will give you plus 10% army defense. So this is only when you're defending. You don't get this if you look at your other techs. There's really nothing for offense unless you start upgrading to other types of troops, which is fine. I mean, there's a lot of ways to increase your offense, but flat out defense you get here. And then as you keep going down into like trench works, into defense in depth, you get a plus 30% army defense, which is huge. And then you can also get concrete fortifications, which is another plus 40%. So in general, even the techs tend to have a huge advantage here. And also your defensive numbers will generally be higher. So even if we look, let's say, at the line infantry here, I think they have a plus 20 offense, but a plus 30 defense. So right off there, too, all of your troops tend to have more defense than they do offense. Same thing here. Plus 30 offense to plus 35 defense. So when you can, be defensive. One thing for new players, make sure you mobilize your armies and you're all set before the war starts, because if you're not, then they're going to take advantage of it. The AI will be there and going offensive, and they will take land because you pretty much have your pants down. So make sure that you mobilize and you have somebody defending on your front line. The next thing is I wouldn't worry so much about this number. I would hover over it, though, and I would say it's saying we have a 38% disadvantage, but our average offense and defense is 48 to their 49. So we're completely fine here. And even though it's saying a 38% disadvantage, it's saying that we have 7 units to their 16, but we know only 7 could potentially be used. So as long as our recovery rate's good, and I'm telling you, every battle, we're definitely not going to get all 7 units involved, and I'll show you the next calculation for that and the reasons why. We're in fine shape here, and then, like I said, we have another 8 troops in standby here to be able to help swap out or be ready for us to jump in when we need to. The next thing you'll see when time goes by, a bar will fill up. So that's pretty much the offense. And what you can see here, you can actually click on it. You can see how many are defending and how many are advancing. And you can hover over the little green bars. This is your morale. So the morale makes a big difference. If you're not at 100% morale, you're not doing 100% damage is pretty much what it relates to. And the damage, how much damage you do, are these offensive and defensive numbers. So when we do go on a defensive side, we're going to be at 54 defense. And look at what the enemy is going to be at, 38 offense. So they're going to be doing a lot less damage. They're going to be doing less casualties and deaths to our side than what we're going to do to them with our defense. Before our first battle kicks off, I do need to explain one more calculation. So we know here, when we're having a defensive fight or just a fight in general, on Mato Grosso, we can have, because of the combat width, up to 7 troops, and so can the enemy. But there's a second calculation that happens. So attackers, the number of troops, a second roll happens for RNG here, can be reduced to a random value between 33% to 100% of their troops. So you can get all the way cut down to a third of your troops when you're attacking. Defenders can get cut down to 50% to 100%. So you can see right there, defenders again have more of an advantage and have a much higher chance of potentially having more troops showing up. So we could probably have our 7 troops showing up where the enemy can only have a third of that 7. So maybe like 2 or 3 troops might be showing up for them. And in that case, they'll be doing less damage and we'll be doing more damage. And that means their morale is going to drop faster and we should win the fight. So the first battle, both sides rolled well. So we both got 100%. So there was no reduction here. And you can see we both have 7, right? So it was the maximum amount that could show up. So our battle is going on here. Their offense, like we thought, was going to be 38. Ours is 53. So we're going to be doing more damage to their troops in this battle. We'll watch it. We could already see just the first tick, right? We lost 17 and 61 wounded to their 30 and 95 wounded. And the troops that we can see that are underneath here are 5 from Lima and from La Paz. And all of theirs is from their Paraguay side. So we can see here, we'll let it run a little bit. Even with these again are another RNG. These will come up where we're having morale loss is 25%. So we're not doing as much morale damage as we could be doing. As well as if they were on the offensive, taking our Providences would have been a little bit harder. But you can see here, we're definitely going to win this fight overall. Their morale, so you can watch the green bar is dropping. And just the amount of dead to the amount of wounded. Look at this. This is really good for us. So this is why it's, important maybe in the beginning to do some defensive battles. And then when we feel like we're ready to push, we can push. There's really no rush other than up here is your worst goal, right? And your worst score. So we can see here, we're already at 97 to their 96, and that's mostly because we're not losing as much, right? Our cost of war is less, the amount of troops that are dying. So a lot of these wars come down to attrition. Another thing to note in this battle, you can see here we're breaking their morale. They're at 45%, so they're doing even less damage, and we're doing 71%. And what's happening is their troops are leaving. So you can see their battalions are leaving. They only have 6 out of their 7, and as time goes on here, you might see even more drop out. Yeah, see down to 5, down to 4. Now it's going back up because there's only 3 of those troops. And after a certain amount of days, I forgot what it is, if the battle's going on, morale will come back up. And another thing to mention about morale is that you got to make sure you have supply lines. If for some reason you have supply lines maybe coming overseas and those get cut off, your morale will drop to 0 and you'll just automatically lose. So supplies are also very important. But in this simple example, we should be fine. Our second battle is 3 to 4. So you can see that in the troops here. We again, defense is way higher, so we're going to again be doing more damage for sure. And we have more of the troops, so this one should be again an easy win. Yeah, you can see we're crushing them here. So, and that makes sense. We also got army defense increase as well, which is nice, and their morale damage is a little bit higher, but we're crushing their troops to where they're not going to have much left here. So you can tell our defensive wars are going great. So what we're going to need to do is potentially think about doing our offense next. So third battle was a 3 to 3, but remember our defensive stats are better. And our start of the battle, our morale was 3 with 100%. So again, the morale was a little bit less, their initial morale. So that gives us an advantage as well. So we're doing even more damage because our morale was higher. This is probably because they're not getting enough troops back in time. And what I'd like to see here too is what you got to check. And this is another big thing is where are our troops getting pulled from? So here you can see the barracks here. As you're replenishing troops and battles are going on, you can see where your troops are actually being retrained at, right? So replacements to happen. And you can see it's definitely happening here over in Lima. So what you want to do here to make things a little bit better, you can see here we have officers that need to be hired as well as servicemen. What you can do is if you have enough authority, you can do enlistment for efforts, which is really good. It'll give 25% faster for training. And then we could remove some of these just for example. And we could also do promote social mobility. This will help get officers faster because they have higher qualifications. So wherever you're pulling your troops from and you're replenishing them, this is good. Definitely decrease the use to help out with this. So for a conquer war, again, you can click here and you can check and see under make peace where they are with their war support. And you can see Paraguay, it'll go down, but it'll go down faster, and it won't probably go down below 0. Yeah, see, war support cannot be reduced below 0 because they hold their capital and the following war goals are not being occupied. So you can't just sit back and just defend all the time. You can do that, again, if you're being attacked. But for this war, we're going to have to go offensive. We're going to let it run a little bit more, maybe a couple more battles, so we get a little bit of a better lead here on the exhaustion. And when that happens, then we're going to start to move our other general in to be offensive. And again, only one battle can happen at a time. So the defensive ones are coming, but there's no way they're ever going to push through. And this is, I think, where, again, I think Paradox needs to change things up. The AI is just aggressively trying to come in. Again, they don't know. They're not figuring out the combat with, and they're just seeing that we have 7 troops to their 16. So they think they got this advantage. They're getting them 25% disadvantage. So they're just going to keep pushing and pushing and just keep throwing troops at us. So this also needs to be changed. All right, so let's move our other general into an offensive position, and now we'll take a look and see how this goes. So once they arrive here in 13 days, they'll be ready on the line, but they'll also be taking attrition. But now we have 2 separate armies doing some fighting, which is really good. So this one over here is just kicking butt, right? Anytime there's a battle going on defensively, we are slaughtering them. But the problem is it's going to be the same side when we go into attack. What's nice is it's one general over here, but they do have the 16 troops, right? So it's going to be tougher for us to get that offensive fights to win, but we'll see. We'll give it a shot. But overall, I think you guys are seeing every battle. We tend to have either the same or more troops because we're defensive. So it does favor it. Now our bars are going here and they're competing. And this is our first offensive fight. You can see here they have the defense of 62. We only ended up with 2 of our troops, so most likely we're going to lose this. So this is where the RNG is kind of frustrating and goes in. So we need to hopefully get like an even battle of 7-7 or something here to be able to get this to work. Or some nice rolls here. So yeah, we're going to get pushed back here. So we're going to hopefully try to get lucky. Again, this general is also pretty decent for offensive. But yeah, we'll keep watching, go back and forth. You can see that's our offensive fight, and then they're probably going to do, the next one is going to be their offensive fight, which we'll probably win that back because defensively we're okay. This is the first time, okay, here, where we actually, they rolled 100% because they got 7 and we've got 5. This could be bad for us, but defensively, again, we're going to just do too much damage. We're 62 to their 38. So here, I think you might get in a sense of, okay, so if I want to do an offensive war, being equal with somebody as far as tech is really not that great. So one of the biggest advantages to have a better general, so you have better morale or just more damage or just better troops. Like you need that next tier troops to have that offense to make the difference. Because here we go again, we're going to try to push. This time we got lucky. We got 5 out of 4. That's probably the max I think we calculated in here. We were thinking like 3. So I guess we're able to get a little bit more in here, 3 or 4. Looks like to be the max, which is nice. So we are having more, even though our offense is 48 to 72. We have more troops here, which is making the difference, luckily. And we're able to fight back. So we are taking a lot of damage, but they're also taking a lot because we have that extra troop. So it's just about pretty even, it's pretty close, but we're able to. We also got a morale damage of 25%, so that helps a lot. But we are taking more casualties. What do they get on this side? They have morale damage too. So both sides are, yeah, both sides morale really tanking here. But what's nice now is if you want to, this is another little tip. If this was a really tough fight, which it kind of was. So let's see. Give it a second. Took over. We can pause. This is a lot of micro, but again, we took over some land here. You can see what we could do is we could check here, and you can see that our general that's advancing is at 66%. Right, and we can see that the defending army is going to be 84%. What we could do is we could flick them over to defending for a bit. Let time go by. Let their morale come back up before we push again. Because that was one good fight. We know right now, defensively, we should be good, right? Whoa, 13. So the reason why this is different now is because we're in a different piece of land. And 13 troops is quite a bit because the infrastructure is so high here. So we pushed that past that small piece of land. We're in now Bajo for Paraguay. You can see that their infrastructure is huge, 54. So that's making a big difference, even though it's in forests. As you guys know, the combat width is going to be much bigger. So that's why we have more troops here. Something to also note, the previous battle where I was confused and why we had more troops than I expected in this piece of land, there is one other calculation that does happen. I didn't think I had to mention it, but it looks like it may come up more often than not. What happens is if your offense is less than your opponent's defense, you actually have a little bit of a higher chance of having one or two extra troops show up. And the same goes on the other side. So what that tries to do is compensate a little bit for if there's such a big swing between offense and defense, at least the other general can throw more troops at it. So now, even though we pushed and just got a single piece or maybe a second piece of land here, we could take a look again now. We could take a look at the war support. We can see that they're going to get a -50 from exhaustion, and this from all the things that are happening now. 16%, you can see they're getting an extra 1.64 because we're occupying some of their land. And also because we have one of the war goals, so we're getting a -2, which was that first piece of land here. Our war support here, you can see from exhaustion, is only -30. So over time now, if we just hold this, we're going to win. So what I would do now is there's no reason to keep pushing and going offensively. We can stay defensive. So that one defensive battle was enough now. As long as we can hold here, which we should be able to, and we have both of our troops here, they're not going to break through. And we can kind of just let time pass. So let's see. Also, another thing to show is that they will borrow troops, right? So we're in a land now, even though we had 7 potentially on the line here, they were able to borrow an additional from La Paz or from pretty much another general, since the land that we're defending on, right, can hold more troops. So it's okay to have, these smaller generals, or these armies with smaller amount of troops, because they will borrow from others. So it's not a huge deal having it separated like this. If anything, it's better because then you can react, especially if a line tends to split. You can then have another general maybe run with it, and they could take some land really quick. So it's to your benefit to probably have multiple generals. The only thing I would say that's really good is if you do have one general that's amazing, you kind of do want them to have as many troops underneath them. Another thing to note that you can do after the latest patches is that you can, under your military wages, pay a very high wage. What this does is allows you a plus 20% morale recovery, which is very good. Again, morale now is damage, and you want to have that at 100% in every battle if you can. And lastly, another good thing to note is by us having both armies here, we now have all of our troops that are available, and we need to at this point, right? Because the land where we're having battles now, or the state where we're going to have battles, can hold up to the maximum amount, so it's to that 16 troops. So we need to make sure that they're all available because the enemy will come with those, right? If they can. So it's 100% needed because now we're defending right in their land, not defending in ours. So just to kind of keep that in mind. So as battles progress, you may need, like, the battalions that you do have hanging back at headquarters, they may have to show up now in the front line. And that's it. We won the war. So we had one big push, and then we defended the rest to be able to win. It's not going to always be that case, but that's, a good scenario of what I would want to do. Which you want to keep in mind, though, right? So overall, going to war is expensive. So we used a lot of people. A lot of people were retrained and killed in those fights. The same thing over here, and I know a lot of people don't realize this or maybe care all too much, but if you have a low population of peasants or free people to work, this is kind of a big deal, right? So not only our side did we lose people, but also the land that we just took over. Or even, let's say you're just going to vassalize them. That means they have less people who could work and make money, right? So war is expensive, so just keep it in mind in this game. It's fun to do and to paint the map, but it isn't necessarily the best option, or if you're trying to go for most efficient economy or something like that, it's not always the best route. And lastly, there's another method. What you can do, let's say we're going to go to war with Brazil, we could hold the line, so have our defensive battles here, and hopefully we could hold that and we'd be, in good shape. Then what we could do is a naval invasion, and that follows the same rules. So we would choose a land, potentially if we wanted one that didn't have forests, like one here, which would be nice because it's got the plains, so there's no penalty. And we would come in with our naval invasion. What you need is a 1-to-1 flotilla to the amount of army that you're going to drop in here. And we also want to keep in mind, look at the infrastructure and all the same things to figure out how many can show up. There's also tech that you need to worry about as well. You want to get landing craft that will also negate the ignore difficult landing penalty. I think it's 25%. So that's another thing that you want to keep in mind. But if you got that, then what you do is you end up creating 2 fronts. So here you can hold the line defensively and you can go offensively navally. And what this will do is potentially need them to split their troops depending on how many they have, and just it gives you other strategies that you can follow. I hope you all found this information useful. I was very hesitant to do this regarding battles in war because I really think it's something that I'm hoping will change in Vicky 3, but I wanted to give you guys the information as I figured it out, and I think it's really important for you guys to know as you're still playing the game, because wars do happen quite often, and knowing and kind of preparing as best you can for the RNG, I think is just super important. If you like this information, hit that like, subscribe, and notification button. They're free, and as always,
For the swarm.